Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. Today we're going to be covering a brand new release coming out of Jim Beam, and this is the Little Book Infinite. So yeah, not chapter 1 to 17, whatever it may be. This is sort of a new project that they're doing. This is, Little Book, Freddie Noe. This is his little love child, and this is a brand new thing he's going to try doing. It's basically, the idea is it's an infinity bottle, and the whole idea is that he's trying to pay, tribute to his family heritage and the generations of distilling. The Booker's lineup goes back to Freddie's grandfather, Booker Noe, who was a master distiller there at Jim Beam, and then his son took over, Fred Noe, and then we got Freddie Jr., and that's why he goes by Little Book, right? It makes perfect sense, just don't think about it. So we're going to be diving into this today. This sample was sent in courtesy of Matt Warren. Let me talk a bit about what's in the blend before we get in here and nose it and taste it and all that business. So basically, like I said, the idea is that it's going to be sort of like an infinity bottle. I don't know if you guys have an infinity bottle. I've got two. One of them is for bourbons, and then the other one is for anything that isn't American whiskey. So I have an infinity bottle that has Irish, Scotch, Japanese, even some Australian in there. And frankly, it's disgusting. But I tried it, and maybe one day it'll get better, but right now it's not good. But anyways, what he's doing is sort of like having an infinity bottle. He's going to start with 4 whiskeys in the blend. They're all Kentucky bourbons. He's going to start with 4 Kentucky bourbons in the blend, and then every year he's going to add one more whiskey to the blend. Now, he did not specifically say in the press statement that he was going to continue to add Kentucky bourbon. He said every year we'll add a whiskey to it. And so I don't know, and he's a bit of a mad scientist with the Little Book stuff anyways. Part of being part of the Beam Suntory family is that he does have access to more than just the Claremont Jim Beam barrels. And so he's able to kind of play with things a little bit, get a little creative. So we'll see. The only thing that concerns me about that is maybe like 3 years down the road, he adds a whiskey to the blend. That's terrible. And then everything after it is going to have, if you did not like that one whiskey that he added, everything from then on out is going to have that one in it. You know what I mean? So that could be, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Maybe a high stakes game for him to play. But like I said, we're starting out with 4 Kentucky bourbons in the blend. So you have a 20-year Kentucky bourbon, and that one is supposed to sort of honor Booker's, name and heritage. And Freddie said that he was specifically trying to pick Kentucky bourbons that really fit the flavor profiles that these guys preferred. So this one's going to pay homage. The 20-year Kentucky bourbon is going to pay homage to his grandfather. Then there is a 14-year Kentucky bourbon in there as well. That one is kind of in line with his father, Fred Noe's palate, and what he likes. And then you've got Freddie, which is going to be a 7-year Kentucky bourbon in the blend. And he says that one's going to have more like fruit and cherry notes. And then finally, there's the 4th one in the blend, which is an 8-year. That's just sort of supposed to, I don't know, in some way, shape, or form, be a nod, a tip of the hat to the whole family. So that's what we're working with on this first one. It's going to come in at 119.3 proof, and the MSRP is $200 on the money. In terms of availability, I'm not really too sure what to expect for availability, although if I had to make a wager, I would say it's probably not going to be the easiest thing to find in the world. So you may have to call around, wait in line, I don't know, maybe even win a lottery, we'll see. All right, so let's get in here and we'll start nosing this thing and see if we can pull out anything that anything that he alluded to. And we don't know the ratios in the blend. It would be really interesting to see, exactly. That's one of the things that I love about, for example, Bardstown Bourbon Company, is their level of transparency. They're like, everything about this whiskey you could possibly want to know, we're going to tell you. We're going to tell you what's in the blend, but also who distilled each barrel that's in the blend and what the ratios are. And I love when distilleries do exactly that. We don't know, though, as far as I'm aware, what the ratios on this are. But I got to tell you right up front, the very first thing I do get hit with, and maybe it's because I mentioned it or because he mentioned it in the press statement, but that cherry note that you get on bourbon sometimes, I'm definitely getting here. It's like not a dark cherry either. It's more like a bright red cherry, and plenty of that butterscotch intermingled with some brown sugary tannic oak. Sometimes in previous videos I've used this note before, where sometimes on the nose it just smells like if you took just raw brown sugar and a plank of oak, and you were just rubbing it into the striations of the wood, you know what I'm saying? Like getting that brown sugar down into the wood. And that's really what I get on this. You get those tannic notes, get those dry notes, but it's also very sweet as well. And the oak is not like that bitey young oak either, at least on the nose. Can't say for the palate yet. But it does have that good warehouse funk that I often get on something like a Booker's batch, that funky warehouse vibe. All right, let's get in on it. Cheers. It's definitely a toe in the line between sweet and kind of peppery, you know? It's got this white peppercorn punch to it, but it is sweet from start to finish. There's no part of that sip where the sweetness gets diminished in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, up front, bright caramely sweetness, like your Werther's Original Butterscotch candies. Nothing dark and deep and rich or molassesy on this, which I was kind of expecting if we've got 20 and 14 year at 119 proof. I was thinking maybe we'd get some high viscosity and some deeper, darker, richer notes. But it is very bright sweetness on this. And then that wave of tannic oak does come in on the tail end, you know, halfway through the palate, and then into the finished part of that transition is just this wave of oak. And then after it, you're left with that cherry note and those dry tannic oak notes. So sweet and fruity on the end with that tannic oak, big wave of oak on the tail end of the palate, and up front, lots of bright, sweet candies. I wish we got a little bit more of that funkiness from the 20 and 14 year. You know, if something was sitting in a Kentucky warehouse for that long, you'd almost expect to get that big wave of funk on the finish. I'm not sure I get it. On follow-up sips, that peppery note is starting to subside a little bit as my palate acclimates. And it's more just that combination of sweet and tannic oak. I know, I feel like the word of the day is sweet. That's very sweet. Okay, so if we got to talk about scores, you know, if you got a $200 bottle here that's blending 2014 8 and 7-year-old Kentucky bourbons, you know, from Jim Beam, I feel like expectations are going to be kind of high. You know what I mean? And I would love to see the ratios in the blend. For me, I think this is I mean, there's absolutely nothing about this sip that is offensive. It's good, start to finish. It's just good Kentucky bourbon right there. But does it, you know, feel like the kind of thing that is coming out the gate showing a lot of complexity? Probably not, but maybe that is by design. You know what I mean? Because if year after year after year they're going to be adding stuff to this, you definitely probably wouldn't want to start out with something that's highly complex, because blending into something that already exists that is very complex would probably be a bit of a challenge, and if you're not going to, you know, compete with the flavors that are already there. So you probably do want to start with something a little simple, a little basic. And I don't know that I would call it basic per se. That sounds almost derogatory, and I certainly don't mean it that way. But it's not highly complex. And so if we're trying to pay homage to generations of distillers, I'm not sure that that would definitely come through unless it was told to me. That being said, this is very tasty. It's very sweet. And I don't think you would regret ever paying for a pour of this. And if you love good Kentucky bourbon, you probably like this bottle if you picked it up too. Okay, so considering my scoring scale, you know, we got a lot of things that are going for it, some things that are going against it. For it, you know, there's nothing about it that's bad, right? Very sweet, some of that tannic oak in there. Against it, I would want, if we got that kind of age on a bourbon, there's a part of me that really wants, especially at 119 proof, to have something viscous, oily, maybe some darker, richer notes on it other than just the bright caramel. And then in addition to that, maybe some added complexity for the price tag. So $200 is not cheap. And there are some incredible whiskeys that you can get at the $140 price point that I would probably take over this. There's some incredible whiskeys at the $90 price point. You know, so it's got a lot of competition if it's competing for your money out there right now. So I think because of that, I would land at what I'm going to say, just a flat 7, right? Just a flat 7 on my scale. Because I do think that it's really good, but that price tag is pretty steep just to have something that is pretty good. And so I think that is also on the very tippity top of the maybe buy category. Maybe because it could be the kind of thing where you just love Booker's, you love Jim Beam products, maybe you love Little Book, and that whole product line, maybe you're a collector. And so for you, it's like, yeah, I definitely got to, I mean, even if it's not the best thing I've ever had, I still want to have it on my shelf. And maybe you just want to have it so that you can compare it. This is one of the things that the guy that provided the sample, Matt, was talking about. His plan is just to continue to get the new additions and then compare them to the previous years and just kind of see how this new product line grows and develops over time. You know, being a whiskey collector and a whiskey enjoyer is a lot of times a game of patience. Just like the craft is. It is a craft of patience. Sometimes you pour your heart and soul into a product, and nobody, including you, gets to enjoy it for another 8, 10, sometimes 20 years. So if that's you, maybe you are like, yeah, I definitely got to pick it up, definitely got to buy it, got to have it on my shelf. Otherwise, I would say pay for a pour first and see if it's your jam. Thanks again, Matt, for supplying the sample today. I appreciate you. As you can see, I do tend to like Bookers, and Little Book is the kind of thing that I do very frequently get down with. So I appreciate your generosity, brother. Hey, big shout out to our Patreon supporters who help to fund the bottles that we get to pick up and review here on the channel every single week. Without you guys, I could not have a channel like this and pump out as much content as I do. So I really appreciate you guys sharing your shelves with me and helping funding the bottles we get to pick up. So cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.